And the college football season is literally right around the corner. So we'll get into some sleepers. We'll get into some maybe teams that can take a step back. Of course, Nick Kosko at Nick Kosko 59 National News Desk 24/7 Sports. Kind enough to join us for a couple moments on a Wednesday. And don't forget, we're hoping to have Nick back during the college football season with the College Football Pick'em Show as well, right here on 1490 Sports Betting Radio. What do you say, Nick?
0 is what, 24 days away roughly, and all of a sudden once we hit week 1 of that first weekend in September, college football's officially back in. Hey, the NFL's back tomorrow with the Hall of Fame game,
yep.
So it's starting to smell like football season, even though we still have those hot summer heat waves coming through in this month of August.
Yeah, listen, absolutely, we do, no doubt. All right, let's get into some of the big boys first. I found that very interesting, the news with Notre Dame and now with the streaming, which is kind of a first. I think a lot of people look at Notre Dame coming back stronger than ever, so to speak, and they think this is a 10, perhaps an 11-win team, and I tend to agree. I don't see a ton of blemishes on their schedule, on their record, and I don't see them going into a ton of games this year as underdogs. What's your thoughts on the Fighting Irish?
Well, when I look at Notre Dame, you see the schedule breaks down. You still have some of those ACC opponents, like when they were temporarily in the conference last year. I mean, really, their hardest games, Q, to me, have to be it's game number 4 at Wisconsin. That they're probably going to be an underdog there, but it'll be very interesting to see because quarterback Jack Cohn, of course, who transferred to Notre Dame, is going back to his old stomping ground. So that'll be a very interesting game. They're going to be favored the very next week, in my opinion, at home against Cincinnati, probably one of the top, if not the top, Group of 5 school in college football. But other than that, I mean, they host USC, so they're going to be favored there. They host North Carolina, so they're probably going to be favored there as well. Even when they go on the road to end the season, actually, at Stanford. Now, we don't expect Stanford to be world beaters this year, but they might be a road favorite there as well. So really, the only game I really see them being an underdog in at this point, based on the lines, is probably going to be their road date against Wisconsin. Even they're at Florida State to open up things, they're going to be a favorite against them as well, because, again, when you look at the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, you have Jack Cohn at quarterback. You have Kyron Williams back at running back as well. Brian Kelly just took this team to the college football playoff just last season. Now, can they get back there again this year? It's certainly possible, but they're back to that independent schedule, so they'll probably have to, eke out, I would say, at least 11 wins this season, if not go undefeated, because they're not playing for a conference title in 2021. But I would say, really, I'm looking at one game this year where they're going to be underdogs, and that's the Wisconsin game on September 25th.
Yeah, and the thing is, look, when you look at the schedule, right, it shapes up pretty favorable. They got the 7 home games, really 4 quote-unquote true road games. You mentioned Wisconsin, that's a neutral site clash at Soldier Field. So I think the circumstances are pretty ripe for Notre Dame this year. How about Clemson?
So I look at Clemson, again, you have to say they're the favorites in the ACC. Now, are there other teams in the ACC this season that I like? Yeah, I love North Carolina this year because I'm a big fan of quarterback Sam Howell. I know everybody gives him the Baker Mayfield comparisons, but Howell's going to be in the Heisman conversation this season. And you look at Miami as well. They're a dark horse in that conversation. Who knows? Maybe Virginia Tech could step it up a little bit here in 2021 as well. But Clemson, they're still going to be the favorite. They still have a great defense. Brent Venables is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country for a reason. You saw Dabo leading the program. DJ Uyang, I can't even say his name. Q. DJ Uyang-Agalele. We'll just call him DJ U, and I think that's what he's referred to this year as when people would call him, because he's going to be in college football for the next 2 years. DJ U is going to be probably one of the better quarterbacks in college football this season, and definitely one of the best come next season before he enters the draft. But I know you're replacing Trevor Lawrence, but it's going to be a seamless transition. So really, Q, until one of North Carolina, Miami, or one of those teams knocks off Clemson, I would say Clemson is down for another 11-1, 12-0 regular season. You're probably talking about them winning the ACC again, either undefeated or with only one loss this year. And they're probably headed back to the college football playoff, to be honest with you.
How about NC State? I mean, to me, I think they might be one of the most intriguing X factors, right? The defensive back seven strongest in the outside of Clemson's. The lines on both sides have been terrific. I think they can kind of be a sleeper. I'm not going to say you're going to knock off Clemson, but I'm looking at NC State Wolfpack, and to me, I think they can do some damage or at least surprise some people.
Yeah, it seems like NC State, I mean, their projected win totals around this year, they've set around 6.5. So I'd say it's really going to depend on quarterback Devin Leary. I mean, Dave Doreen's 4-win season back in 2019, probably just an outlier. They won 8 games in 2020. So I look at the Wolfpack and say, you know what, this is a team that is probably pretty dependent upon their quarterback. And again, the ACC, while it's not loaded, you do have a couple more teams that are much better than anticipated. You look at Clemson is beside themselves, of course. North Carolina is very good. Miami is very good this year. Florida State could be a really good team this year if things break right with their quarterback. Look at Mackenzie Milton transferring in from UCF after his devastating leg injury. So NC State is one of those. It could be one of those sleeper teams in the ACC now, not necessarily to challenge for the title, but the fact that their win total is set at 6.5. I would lean towards the over, but I believe this is a bowl team this season. So if you hit the under, they're 6-6. They're still going to a bowl game. But the way Dave Doreen has that team shaped up right now, as long as quarterback Devin Leary is as good as advertised, this team is bound to probably at least 7-8 wins. So I'd say if you're looking for a win total prop already early in the season as we approach the college football season, I'd say I would hit the over right now on NC State 6.5.
Big Ten, you look at some of these teams, Big Ten, if we go from an East standpoint, right? You look at Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Indiana. People might be sleeping on Indiana, your Rutgers, which we'll get into. But I look at Ohio State. Are they as good as 2020? No. Are they as good as 2019? No. But to me, I still think they have the talent where you can't throw out this, right? We can't sit there and say they're not going to be in the mix for a national title. And I also think the schedule is favorable. I mean, you open up on the road against Minnesota, Oregon, Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland. I think you got a road game against Indiana, Penn State, Nebraska. I'm looking down here, Purdue, Michigan State, and then obviously the Big Ten championship in December. They're right to make another run here with that schedule.
Yeah, I really can't see Ohio State dropping a game this year, too. Again, you have to play. Again, we always talk about the quarterbacks, and for Ohio State, you're replacing Justin Fields with probably C.J. Stroud, who is going to be probably just as good in that Ryan Day offense. Now, is he as good of a quarterback as Justin Fields? Well, of course, that remains to be seen. He has to let a whole season, maybe 2 seasons play out before you can make that judgment. But C.J. Stroud is going to be very good in this offense. And I would say, too, I mean, it seems like Ohio State's toughest games this year are probably going to be the home game against Oregon. And again, Oregon is the one coming over to Columbus, Ohio. So that game is week 2. That'll be a very interesting contest because Oregon is definitely the favorite in the Pac-12 right now. And then other than that, I mean, I'm looking at Ohio State's schedule. They're on the road against Indiana. Indiana, one of those dark horse teams in the Big Ten. But again, I'm going to favor Ohio State. Their toughest game, Q, has to probably be the Penn State game at home on October 30th. But again, it's at home. It's at the Horseshoe. Is Penn State ready to fully rebound after last season's Jekyll and Hyde season where they started 0-5 and they won 4 in a row to end the year? And, of course, you have the road game against Michigan. It's the biggest rivalry game in college football, maybe aside from Auburn, Alabama. But, Jim Harbaugh has never beaten the Buckeyes during his tenure. So I'm going to favor Ohio State once again. So it's very tough for me to pick a loss on their schedule, Q. I'd say Ohio State's bound for a 12-0 regular season. We're talking about them winning yet another Big Ten championship unless Wisconsin pulls something out of their hat in the Big Ten West. So I would say Ryan Day is going to get the team right back to the Final Four when we come to later this winter.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think a couple things. I think the home game against Oregon is probably going to be what everyone kind of focuses on, right? I mean, you should be able to roll through the rest of the slate. And then the open date, October 16th, then back on the road against Indiana, as you alluded to, back home to Penn State, back on the road to Nebraska. I don't really think they're going to be formidable oppositions. All right, I'll give you 30 seconds or so on Rutgers before we move on. What are your realistic expectations for Rutgers going into the season?
Realistic, I could see Greg Schiano's crew eking out 5 wins. Now, would a bowl game be nice this year? We occasionally see those 5 and 7 teams sneak into the bowl games because, God forbid, there are so many bowl games, Q. But can this team realistically win 6 games this year? Realistically, I'm going to lean towards no. Can they? It would not totally shock me, but I'm going to labor my expectations. I could see Rutgers, getting 4 or 5 wins this season, looking much more improved over last year's 3-6 campaign. Don't forget, last year, even though they were 3-6 in that shortened season, they were a couple blunders in overtime away from beating Michigan at home, and they basically blew the game at home as well against Illinois a couple weeks later as well. So they were a couple plays away from being 5-5. I like the direction Schiano has the program going in his second stint at Rutgers, and don't forget, they return basically 98% of their starters. So they're one of the more veteran teams, if that counts for anything in college football, throughout the entire Big Ten. So I'd say Rutgers is going to be a competitive program this year. I'm not expecting world beaters or even a bowl game this year, Q, but don't be shocked if this team somehow surprisingly wins 6 games and they're playing in, maybe the Pinstripe Bowl again up at Yankee Stadium for the umpteenth time.
Here's the thing, right? So they start the season Temple, Syracuse, Delaware. Now, again, on paper, you would say that could potentially be a 3-0 start, potentially. But that Syracuse game on the road, that would have been a sure loss a few years ago. I think now it's more like 50-50. But then Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State at Northwestern, I think it's a little more of a rougher start. So, yeah, I mean, listen, you can go 3-0 before you start to deal with the big boys. Maybe you find a way to win one of the next 4. Maybe you say you take out Illinois. And if you can get that upset win, as you mentioned, listen, there's 5 wins right there.
Yeah, no doubt. And I would say Rutgers fans are mostly they're probably expecting at minimum a 3-0 start because Temple at home. If they were at Temple, then you feel like, all right, that's an opening day trap game at Syracuse. Us Rutgers fans love to have that Jersey New York rivalry, so to speak, with Syracuse back in the Big East days. UDEL should be the win. So I'm thinking if they're 3-0 Q, they're going to have Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Northwestern the next 4, as you just mentioned. But if I'm going to pick out a winner of those, I would take Michigan State at home during their homecoming on October 9th. Michigan State is another program in the Big Ten that's under a pretty big rebuild under Mel Tucker going into his second year. Don't forget, Rutgers did beat the Spartans on the road, forcing 7 turnovers in the opening game last year. So, I mean, don't be shocked if the Scarlet Knights are somehow favored at home against the Spartans in early October. But you need to get your 4 wins there. You're 4-2, but then Northwestern's is no easy game, especially on the road. They're at Illinois. So that'll be tough. So let's just say they're 4-4, and now you have 4 games left: Wisconsin, Indiana, Penn State, Maryland. Maybe 1-3, so you probably get 5 wins on the year. But there is a realistic path to 5, and then maybe God forbid if they pull an upset somewhere, there is some kind of path. Maybe just one scenario, but there is some kind of path to 5 or 6 wins this year.
Yeah, well, tell you what, I'll have the last word on this one because I know we'll talk Rutgers throughout the season. You open up and lose to Temple. Guess what? You're going to follow that up with a loss to Syracuse. All right, how about a couple teams? That can give me 1 or 2 that you think can be potentially disappointing this year?
As far as disappointing, I'd have to lean towards my Florida Gators, unfortunately. Now, do I think Florida is going to be disappointing? No, but I feel like there are expectations for the program. Again, it seems like everyone's picking the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world to represent the SEC in the conference title game this year, particularly Georgia coming out of the East because they bring back JT Daniels. Kirby Smart has this team in great position. They had a couple big transfer additions a couple months ago back in the spring. And the Gators, of course, lose their big trio on offense in quarterback Kyle Trask, tight end Kyle Pitts, and wide receiver Kadarius Toney. So you essentially replace them with Emory Jones and a couple other up-and-coming guys. So Emory Jones, the new quarterback, he's looked good in spots during his brief appearances over the past couple of years. I personally like him. I think Dan Mullen's a quarterback whisperer, so I personally have more expectations for Florida, but I think they could be a disappointing team in the sense of, all right, maybe they can win 9 to 10 games, but just be beat out by Georgia for the East Division title. Now, disappointing to me would be this team only wins 7 to 8 games, and I could totally see that happening if the Emory Jones experiment with Dan Mullen does not quite work out here in 2021.
Interesting. I was actually going to throw Georgia there because think about this. They got way too much talent to not be in the college football playoff, right? They've got the ability to go out and say, beat a Clemson. There's no Alabama on the schedule. So there's no other team other than Clemson who should really get a problem. I guess it goes to the health to say JT Daniels, if he's healthy and everything is going right, that's wonderful. But it's the SEC, right? The expectations, 11, 12 wins, SEC title, trip to college football playoff. I mean, anything less, to me, would be potentially a disappointing season for Georgia.
Yeah, I say so because don't forget, I mean, not only does Georgia bring their offense, into the 21st century at this point with a better gunslinger in J.T. Daniels, and I think with a full, now that he had a kind of a half a season as a starter for the Bulldogs last year after transferring in from USC, he's got that under his belt. He's comfortable with the school and the system. And don't forget, too, they brought in Eric Gilbert, the transfer from LSU, and he was going to go to Florida. I mean, this guy seemed like he was going to transfer into every single college in the SEC. He started at LSU, the star tight end last year, decided to go to Florida, then he pulled out. Now he's coming to Georgia as a wide receiver. So you had a piece like that. I mean, your offense better be putting up, in the upper 30s, lower 40s per game, especially in the SEC East, where really your only competition is probably going to be the Florida Gators. And if you could do that, you're probably walking to the SEC title game. Then you just have to get through the Alabama Crimson Tide. But, Q, we know how the college football playoff works. It could certainly take two SEC teams like Alabama and Georgia once again, like they did a couple of years ago. So I am going to be with you on that. If Georgia is anything short of a college football playoff appearance, even if they don't win the SEC, I'd say that's pretty disappointing for Kirby Smart's crew.
All right, listen, before I let you get out of here, and again, Nick Kosko at Nick Kosko 59 National News Desk at 24/7 Sports, and of course, Are You Wrestling, Jersey Flight, Atlantic City FC. He's all over the place, and of course, 1490 Sports Bet. I see. Now, what are you doing? A ton of grappling training now? You got something going on? I know your buddy's going to be. What is it? A tournament this weekend down here?
That is correct. Yeah, I mean, of course, my wrestling days were long gone. Long over 3 years ago when I finished college, and so I got into the jiu-jitsu world, as most wrestlers probably transition to. If you're not, if you're not a world beater like me, you transition to a different sport where you can actually go to your back and it's okay. So I've been training over at Harvard Jiu-Jitsu, one of our old sponsors of the College Football Pick'em Show. So our head instructor, Albert Twyab, is competing this Saturday at the Showboat right down here in Atlantic City at the Emerald City Invitational. Their second card they're putting up. He's got a super fight against a black belt. I'm not sure the exact start time when he goes on, but the event starts at 5 o'clock right over the Showboat. So, he's going to be well represented with my other teammates cheering on our friend and coach, and he'll showcase some of the best jiu-jitsu there is in the world. Forward to getting you on during the college football season and obviously the Saturday show as well. I always appreciate it, pal. Keep up the great work. Appreciate a couple moments. Appreciate you as always, Q. Thanks, man. All right, you got it. There you have it. All right, so great stuff as always with our guy, Nick Kosko, for a couple moments. 4:37, we'll reset the table. Sports.